Lift the Rock is designed to connect the startup community with the existing business community. So we find too often there's kind of a disconnect between those two groups in our whole entrepreneurial ecosystem. So our goal is to connect them to each other. To that end, I make an ask of the crowd every week. What I want to know is who you know that our presenter needs to meet. Maybe it's a bank CFO, maybe it's an aspiring magician, maybe it's just somebody who's really awesome and well connected you think could help our company succeed. You're going to take your last magician, you're going to find out why I said that in a minute. Anyway, but I'm going to ask you to make a connection. I'm not going to ask you for contact information. What I am going to ask you to do is just commit to me that you're going to introduce Jim to your friend Bob. All right, that's all I'm asking for. Then we'll follow up with you via email asking, hey, did you connect Jim with Bob? Don't forget to connect Jim with Bob. We're not going to harass you. Just to hold you a little bit accountable. Because we need those connections to be made so that we can all expand our networks and make an even bigger, better entrepreneurial ecosystem for everybody. So, with that, one more quick reminder, I have tons of breakfast over there. So when we get done doing this little part, if you would do a girl a favor and eat some food, I'd appreciate it. And with no further ado, I'm going to give you Jim Ketting with PFITR.
Yay.
Let me fix that.
Oh no, what happened?
You pressed the wrong button, Jim.
Oh,
That's
man,
what happened.
I'm sorry. What can I do?
Oh, fancy.
So my name's Jim Ketting. I'm the founder and CEO of PFITR, and I'm really excited to tell you about my business and what we're doing. My background, and I usually start with this slide. People say, why do you start with this slide, Jim? And we went way, way too far there. We start with this slide because somebody came to me and said, Jim, if you would have told me a little bit about yourself and your team, I would have listened to your presentation. You know, so I start here, background in the institutional bond business. How many know what the institutional bond business is? 3 of you, great. So the institutional bond business, if you think of all the treasuries and everything out there, you know, there's about $30 trillion before we get into corporate debt. So that's not even half the size of the bond market, but all of these people buy and sell these bonds all the time. So I was a bond salesperson, then I managed other bond salespeople. Then what I did was I started an investment advisory fund, advising people how to put together these bond portfolios, and I got really good at it. So I wrote a book. We wrote a book a little while ago called Public Fund Investing for Dummies. Gave away about 15,000 of those books. Something happened in the market in 2008 where we had all this challenge with the bond market having these challenges. So I got hired a lot to do a lot of speaking around the country. As we did that, you know, I started working more and more with all these public treasurers and training them, and we wrote a couple of accreditation programs to teach them how to be better stewards of public funds. So after I did all this teaching, and we're going out and doing these teaching, I found that they didn't have the tools that they needed, so I got some brilliant engineers. Todd Priest over there is a guy who worked with Thomson Reuters, Bank of America, A.G. Edwards, brilliant system architect. All our developers are internal, but we became a thought leader in fixed income investing. So, start with a little bit of a story. This is my friend here, Kurt Prenzler. And Kurt gets elected to treasurer. And as Kurt gets elected to treasurer, he's in office for 3 whole days, and the auditors come in and say, you're down $3.7 million. And Kurt says, it's my 3rd day. And you know what those auditors said? We don't care. Your portfolio is down $3.7 million. What are you going to do about it? It's a $100 million portfolio. He wasn't even earning 3.7%, and he thought these investments were all safe. So how did he get there? How did he get to that point of having investments that are $3.7 million down? Well, it's something called interest rate risk. Now let me show you a little bit about interest rate risk. This is my little cane here. And if interest rates rise, the value of the bond goes down, okay? If interest rates go down, the value of the bond goes up. Does that make sense? So, As we change, we can have bonds that are more price sensitive to interest rates or less sensitive to interest rates. And mathematically, we can figure this out. So Kurt bought a whole bunch of bonds that were, or his predecessor bought a whole bunch of bonds that were very, very interest rate sensitive. So the interest rate went up by 0.5%. He lost $3.7 million of the portfolio, and it was a big challenge. Not only did he have his name in the paper 10 times for the next 7 months, he had a big problem of how do I get out of this? It's a catch-22. If he sells some of his portfolio, he takes that loss. If he doesn't sell part of his portfolio, then he has the potential of it going down more. So let's look at today's environment. We're in a low interest rate environment. And a lot of people are buying these investments that they think are safe, but there's a lot of risk. And there's something called commission bias. It's recommending the highest commission possible. So a broker is going to say, which is, you ask a broker, which one's going to be best for me? And he's like, this one, over here, where I make the highest commission. And sometimes those have the highest interest rate. So we have this bias in the market. The reliable data is very hard to find. How many of you ever heard of Kelley Blue Book? Okay, so you can go out and you can look up the price of a car very simply and find out what that is before you go into the dealer, right? Bond market, there's no Kelley Blue Book until we now have made one. So we've made the Kelley Blue Book for the bond market. So investment decisions are based upon TWADI. Do you know what TWADI is? This is how we've always done it. Right. So they've always done it this way, and people are in this habit of doing the same thing. So I will ask somebody today, should you buy a 6-month treasury, or should you buy a 6-year agency, or a 3-year muni? So today, if I ask somebody that question, what do you think they come back with? It depends. It depends. So it depends, and I said, well, what does it depend upon? And they said, well, it depends upon state statutes and policy considerations and my objective and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of data that goes into trying to make these decisions. And then we got to consider the strategy and what does the market say and all this external advice. And then they just say, well, you know what? I'll just do what I've always done. And I messed up, sorry. I'll do what I've always done, which is I'll put it all in the bank, have nothing but, the status quo, or I'll start chasing yield. So what we did was we came up with a product like the Kelley Blue Book for bonds and the Carfax for bonds that helps people make decisions better, easier, faster. So we give them real pricing history. We identify risks, identify opportunities, market transparency, internal controls, and it's very intuitive. People learn from this. So this is all great and exciting, but that big area that we talk about called the interest rate risk, I'm missing it. Interest rate risk, it shows what happens here, if I can use my little pointer. This is the price of the bond today, and it shows what happens if interest rates go up by 1%, the price goes down by 7.5%. So somebody can look at that real quick and say, don't know if that's a fit for the portfolio, but before, they didn't have these nice little graphs that showed all that math in there for them. So on this one, we can see the estimate of what's going to happen to that bond. If they bought it at 100, goes down to 92.69, means they've lost almost 7.5% on that bond. A lot of risk. So our market opportunity is local governments, banks, and credit unions. Now, can other people use this product? Absolutely. We've got a conglomerate of hospitals that we work with too, but this is our focus. Now, local governments, there's about 89,000 when you add up all the cities and school districts and counties and state governments and port authorities and water districts and sewer districts and airports and on and on and on. Out of those, we have a great group called Accredited Public Investors. They have the certified accreditation called the CPFIM, Certified Public Fund Investment Manager, and we did all the training on that. So we're educating them on how to do it. So we've got a great in with all of these people. Banks and credit unions, we've got about 13,000 out there, and there's a little entity out there called the FDIC. Have you ever heard of the FDIC? You know what the FDIC is worried about? Interest rate risk. So they're going out to all the states, talking to all the banks and saying, what are you doing about interest rate risk? You know, I feel like somebody who invented the airbag, and there's a mandate to, put airbags in all the cars, because we've got the only product out there right now that helps them look at interest rate risk. So we've had a couple successes, a couple customer successes. These are all the logos that we've had, or a couple of them that we've actually sold to and are paying customers. This is my friend Kurt Prenzler again. He bought our product. He says, this tool helps me minimize commissions and other transaction costs, helping me get more yield. What it doesn't say, it also helps him lower his risk so he doesn't have those problems of $3.7 million down. The other one is the bankers that we started talking to when we came down here. First bank I talked to, showed it to Luke King. Luke King looks at this and says, oh my gosh, he says, I could sell this to any bank. He says, Jim, I've got every product under the sun. I've looked at them all. There's nothing else out there like this. This is an incredible product. So it's a lot of edification that we're getting. So why now? One, we've got regulatory groups helping us with this issue, and 2008 problems are still looming. How much is a 10-year bond? Does anyone know what that is? Anybody in the mortgage industry? It's 1.5%. Now, if we went back in time, remember the 80s, early 80s? What was the 10-year bond at that time? 14%? 19%? I mean, we're just at unprecedented lows in this interest rate. So these 2008 challenges that we had are still looming, and it's helping keep those interest rates really, really low. So how do we fit in the market? What's our competitive fit? There's a couple other things out there that you can buy, or tools that you can buy, that help you get pricing data on the bonds. Unfortunately, they're designed for the people who sell the bonds or who advise on what you should buy. They're very expensive and they're difficult to use. So we turned it on its head and we said, how do we provide a product for the buyer of bonds and not the seller of bonds? And that's where we came up with our bond price validation tool. Now, 95% of our market is indirect competition, which means they don't look up the price on the bonds. They take whoever they're working for their word for it. So there is no Kelley Blue Book or anything to go out and check these prices. They just take the advice of whoever they're buying the bonds from. Wow. So our model, as far as growing, trying, come on, there we go. There we go. So we built this big giant product, does everything. We had a lower adoption rate. We went back to the drawing board, brought our internal team in. We said, what can we sell that we get really quick adoption rate, sell really fast, everyone will buy? And that was the bond price validation tool. Just the pricing. Everyone has to buy bonds. Our phase 2 is now the due diligence and the reporting and the portfolio returns. And then phase 3 is where we deal with the banking integration and the GASB and the FASB reporting. There we go. So our pipeline is real simple. I'm kind of an old school guy. You pick up the phone, you call somebody, you say, hey, I got this great product. Let me show it to you. Take 5 minutes. And you get a couple appointments on the phone. You get a couple proposals out. After those proposals, you get a couple closes. It's just a standard pipeline. And it works really, really well. The SaaS recurring revenue means software as a service. It's like an insurance policy. It pays over and over and over again. And the reason why that's important is because it increases the value of our proposition. Our company goes a lot higher because we have this revenue. Right now we have 19 paying customers, now 20 because the city of Little Rock is actually using our product and making trades. And we've got about 33 proposals out, closing rate of about 13.1%, and the growth of our company is tied to our sales force. Our pro forma is we're trying to get to the place where we're at $50 million in annual recurring revenue in 5 years. We've done the math on that, and it's just a flat-out numbers game. We get the sales force and the salespeople. We have the demand for the product. It'll happen. And what we're looking to do is raise $1.9 million. Out of that, we've already raised $756,000 from 10 different investors. 6 of them are institutional. And we've used the money primarily for building out the sales and marketing team of our company. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay?
Okay, so I want to know if any of you have ever had anything financial explained to you with a magic wand before. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah, right? So I'm sure we have some other questions for Jim. Yes? Oh. Gotta go to the mic. Yep. Sorry, Joe.
How much pricing for the individual?
The pricing for the individual, well, right now we have it for institutional, so we're trying to stay about $950 a month. But we probably have a special deal that we can work with you for, like, Friends of the Venture Center or something like that. So we can work something out with you. I did sell Collins. He was my first consultant that I sold it to, and made him an awesome deal. So,
Great product. Having traded before on the bank side, this would have been really, really nice to have, this product and this knowledge in front of me. And we've talked about that already. One of the questions, and I don't know if everybody understands, is who's actually doing the trade? Are they still going back to their principal to trade, so they're going back to First Tennessee or to someone else? Because you're not actually executing trades through this.
no, we don't execute the trades. We're trying to separate, we just provide the data. We're a data provider, a reseller of data, mathematics, the quant, the analytics. If they can trade whoever they want. So a lot of times they'll go to a First Tennessee or a Cruz and Associates or a Stevens or J.P. Morgan, whoever they go through.
Hey, Jim. I saw on your attraction slides you talked about some state entities in other states. Have you been able to talk with any of this Arkansas state government agencies, and if so, kind of what's been some of their feedback on the product?
So we have. We've actually talked to several entities in Arkansas, and one of the ones that we just brought on board was the city of Little Rock. They've actually, emailed me this week and said, hey, use your product and make a couple trades. I've got 10 million more trades to go through. Absolutely love the product. One of the things that we're trying to do, and this is really important, is how many of you think local governments are just brilliant and wise and excellent stewards of your money? Okay. Well, the challenge is they need to have education, and they need to have the tools to handle that. And so what we want to do is the state of Arkansas is to make them the poster child for good fiscal stewardship and investing all of our tax dollars. And so we're working with the state of Arkansas to have a licensing agreement for every city, county, public entity, school district out there to where they can use this for free. It's a licensing agreement. The state would pay for it, and then we would have all the education. If we got 5 basis points more in return for the state of Arkansas, so that's 5% of 1%, then that would be about $12 million for taxpayers in the state of Arkansas. And you know what? We're not even half that for all of the people in Arkansas. So that's one of the things that we're really trying to work towards.
Anybody else? Well, I have one. I want to know why you didn't do more magic.
Well, I can't. I've already done my trick.
That was your one trick for today?
That was my one
in
trick
case
for
you
today.
don't know, Jim is a part of the VC FinTech Accelerator and has been doing lots of little random, I would call them almost drive-by magic tricks on us for, the past several months. You walk up and he's like, let me show you something, and oh crap, You've been sucked in again, right? And there's magic happening. There are quarters behind your ears, and all manner of things. So anyway, so Jim, who can we connect you to?
A couple things as far as connecting me is bank CFOs. They really need this product. Especially community banks. They don't have any tools like this, and this saves them a lot of money. When I show that challenge of Kurt Prenzler losing $3.7 million, that was on $100 million. And interest rates went up 0.5% in 1 month, and that caused that $3.7 million loss. Banks, if they have a $1 billion portfolio and interest rates go up by, let's say, 2%, the market rates go up by 2%, it's going to be very, very painful. And the CEO is going to go to that CFO and say, got some splaining to do, as they like to say, So I'm trying to save that heartache. If you know any CEOs or financial people in local governments or anybody who manages a bond portfolio, I want to talk to them.
Does it matter what size bank it is?
No. Small bank, the better. The bigger banks, it doesn't mean that they're a lot sharper or smarter, but the more money you manage, the more smart you think you are, So a bull market, they said, don't confuse a bull market with genius, So we've had a bull market in the bond industry for a long time.
Excellent. Okay, anybody else with a question for Jim? All right, well then let's give him a little love, shall we?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. So you remember at the beginning I asked you to help me connect Jim to people in your sphere of influence. So there are some cards on the table for you. If you would turn those cards over, it's on the back where you will write down who you think you could introduce to Jim. Now, as he said, it's CFOs. It could be Penn Jillette. If you've got a connection, any magic would work. So anybody that you know in a bank or who does bond management for cities, municipalities, anything like that, we would love to help Jim make those connections. So Ashley is going to collect those from you. Ashley, hand in the air. In case you don't know Ashley, that's her back there. So we also have one more thing that we're about to do here, and we again thank Jim for his awesome presentation. Oh, this is being a pain, isn't it? Okay, so I need Lumo Exchange to come on up, and I'm not sure if E's here. E's not here, so we're just going to do it without him. So at Lift the Rock, whenever there is a traction event that one of our member startups or anyone in the community wants to celebrate, that they let us know ahead of time, we honor that by banging the gong, right? So today, Lumo Exchange, and if you could actually grab that mic, Mom. Lumo Exchange is going to talk to us about what their traction event is, and then, well, he's going to bang the gong. Here we go.
So the last time I was here, we talked about our plan to create a marketplace across the world, and we're able to work with Flutterwave, who has a payment infrastructure for Africa, and we've partnered to use their integration platform to integrate with banks in Nigeria. So instead of Lumo Exchange integrating with 5-6 banks, we'll leverage their technology as a licensing agreement to be able to actually accelerate how we offer this marketplace approach to remittances to Africa. Some of you guys have seen our presentation a couple of weeks ago. We also made some good headway in Philippines. We actually signed our first 2 banks. Actually have to fly to Philippines to actually sign it, but definitely a big move for us. So that's what we have to share with you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. I always remain surprised at how subtly everyone hits this gong. Like every time I expect it to just be walloped, but what? You're going to whack it when it's your time? Okay, stay tuned for Jim, who's going to break the gong in half when he hits it. So, or do you have a traction event to share? We'll get your tail up here. What do you have? You didn't let me know ahead of time.
I'm sorry. Well, I got to present sort of Lift the Rock, so.
That's your traction event? I'll take it, I guess. Oh, too far. Well, whatever. Pretend it still has the right thing on the screen. All right.
2 things. State of Arkansas wants a proposal from PFITR
you bang a gong. I'm just saying. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Be sure to fill out those cards with the connections you're willing to make and or any presenter suggestions. Grab some food, drink some coffee, and we'll see you next week.